As iconic as Toy Story is, and how much of a cultural impact it's been, I have to say that the sequel is even better. You heard me right. I am willing to die on this hill. Hello, Jeremy Senpai here. And last time we talked about A Bug's Life, but now it's back in the toy box we go as we're getting into Toy Story 2. But before we get into that, I feel the need to tell you that this movie was almost lost and might have not seen the light of day at all. You see, during Toy Story 2's production, there was an incident where all the data was lost and it looked like they wouldn't be able to deliver on the movie. That is, if it wasn't for Galton Suzman, a producer at Pixar who was working from home while on maternity leave and had backups for the movie on her home computer. This is what saved Toy Story 2 from becoming lost media. And sadly, Miss Suzman was laid off by Pixar in May of 2023, despite being a prominent member of Pixar with multiple projects under her belt. I just felt that I should share this story so this can add a new light to the production of Toy Story 2 and hope you all have a new appreciation for it. Please, I ask that you always remember this. But now, let's move on to the movie itself. The first major thing I want to talk about is the different dynamics that this movie has to offer. We see how Woody and Buzz end up switching positions. This time, it's Buzz who remains resolute in his stance, while Woody is the one questioning his position as a toy. At the beginning of the movie, Woody is scared to death that just not having his hat would be enough for Andy not to take him to cowboy camp. So when Woody's arm rips, it adds an extra level problem about what happens when a toy gets broken. Woody is forced to be shelved and stay behind while Andy leaves without him, and Woody's first instinct is that Andy doesn't want to play with him no more because he's broken. But just like with the first movie, this is just Woody's insecurities speaking for him. At the end of the movie, we learn it's because Andy doesn't want to risk Woody further by taking him to cowboy camp. And from this, we see the bigger issues of what happens to toys after they're broken. This is like a forced retirement. Obviously, in real life, we all know this to be true, but this is probably the first time when we see it from the toy's perspective. Broken, useless, worthless, unloved. In theory, these toys more or less live forever. They're not organic, they don't age. We do know that Woody and the rest of the Roundup gang were around in the late 50s, so them being broken is the worst possible thing to happen to them. That's when we get to Big Al from Al's Toy Barn. Woody was so concerned with things like his hat missing or a rip in his arm diminishing his worth as a toy, and yet, when Al discovers Woody, the way he's carrying on, you'd think he found a bar of solid gold. Al even diminishes the rip like it's the smallest thing in the world, something that pretty much destroys Woody's self worth, and Al just goes, "Oh, little tear, no problem. I'll just call my man Jerry from his chess game to come fix you up." In the first movie, we see how children treat their toys. With Andy, we saw love and playtime, while with Sid, we see abuse and mistreatment. And now, we get to Al, an adult man who collects toys and other merchandise, treasures them so he can sell them to the highest bidder. A very clever way of interpreting things compared to the first movie. Here, Woody realizes that there's more to him than just being a toy. Now, he realizes he's valuable property, a part of the Woody's Roundup TV show that ended before their finale episode, only adding more to their value. Also, I just want to point out a little plot hole here. In the first movie, Woody and the other toys are self aware to the point that Potato Head and Rex even know the names of their manufacturer companies, and yet Buzz is fully immersed in his own lore as a space ranger, and yet somehow Woody doesn't know anything about his TV show until now. So, this adds fuel to the fire of a fan theory that Woody is actually a prototype Woody doll, which is why he's self aware in the first place. I also love how on Woody's Roundup, the entire thing is literally just puppets on strings, paying homage to the Howdy Doody show, which helped inspire Woody originally, and Woody's initial design as a ventriloquist dummy. Here, we meet the rest of the Roundup gang, the lovable mascot Bullseye, the sidekick Jesse, and the comedic relief Stinky Pete the Prospector, each brought here from different reasons, but ultimately to all be sold to a toy museum in Tokyo, Japan. Here, Wee takes a stand believing that making a kid happy is the most rewarding thing about being a toy, while the others remain adamant in their stances. But the thing is, neither side is technically wrong. If they do go to the museum, they'll be loved and adored for what they are without having to worry about being thrown away. They'll be cared for, and in theory, they'll last forever. But they'll also be treated like merchandise, not like toys. Compared to being played with and loved by kids, they'll be treated more like celebrities and not as something tangible. There's a difference between being valued and being loved. By the way, I just wanted to add that if they did go to the museum, they'll be put under intense security, where they'll be watched by cameras and alarms and other measures to prevent theft. So, unless the other toys at the museum figured out how to get past those securities, this could stop being Toy Story and become Night at the Museum, except that they can never move again. But I digress. They counter argue with Woody, pointing out that toys don't last forever, and their kids will eventually grow up and forget about them. Where's your value then when you're broken and thrown away? Something Jesse has experience with. We see later in probably the most heartbreaking scene of the entire Toy Story series that Jessie had a kid of her own, Emily, who she was close to just like Woody was to Andy. That is, until she grew up, finding new interests and gaining new friends. But Jessie couldn't understand that. Being loved by a child is supposed to be her purpose in life. So, didn't Emily love her anymore? Jessie spent years waiting, hoping that it was just a mistake, and that if she remained loyal, eventually that would pay off and it would be good days yet again. But when Emily did find her, the only thoughts she had were, oh, I still have this, before just donating her off to someone else. You know, growing up, my parents used to say the brave little toaster is the reason why people don't want to throw their old stuff away. But no, this scene right here did it. This scene has levels upon levels of death. They'll actually make you rethink your own childhood toys and treat them as if they were real, even though you know they actually aren't. In the end, Jessie acted cold towards Woody, wanting to go home to Andy because she's been there before and didn't want Woody, the toy who was made to be her hero, to go through what she had to. You feel horrible for Jesse for waiting for years in vain. But on the other side, you can't blame Emily either. We were all in her position at some point, growing and changing, having new interests. That's the sad reality that people grow and change, and that can lead to people growing apart from each other. Not all friendships are meant to last, and when they break apart, it might hurt one person worse than the other who may not even remember. When it comes to Jesse and Emily's story, this is extremely relevant. Yes, this is just a story of a kid and her toy, but this could be relevant as well. This is no different than two friends that grew up together and eventually started to drift apart, one choosing to grow and change, and the other remaining the same, hoping to reconnect without knowing that someday it'll all be in vain. We've all been there. We've all grown and changed to the point that old friends might not even recognize us anymore. And on the other side of that, it's not a bad thing either. Growing and changing is a part of life. So, are we guilty because we grew and became different people while other people remembered us for the way we were? This is Woody's turning point, where he realizes what Jesse has said has already been proven true, especially since in his mind he's already been abandoned by Andy because of his broken arm. So, Woody decides to join the Tokyo Museum bandwagon. This is where Buzz and the gang come back in to try and convince Woody to come home with them, only for Woody to tell them his new plans. And I love this scene. Since the script is flipped, this time it's Buzz trying to talk sense into Woody, even using his own words. You are a toy. Ironically, Buzz is more like Woody in the first movie as opposed to Woody himself as he is now, and it takes Woody almost losing his chance for him to realize his true actions, and tries to catch up to his friends, but not before he extends an offer to his Roundup gang to become Andy's toys with him. However, there's one outlier not seeing eye to eye. Not so mint in the box, Stinky Pete. I plan on doing a whole video devoted just to him, but let's go through with him real fast here. The idea of a toy that didn't sell well, thus becoming a collector's item, never got played with, and thus becoming bitter and hateful, all the while developing this feeling of superiority because other toys were getting bought, played with, and destroyed, while he remained untouched. Now he's done with the sweet words. He'll force the others to go to a museum to help build up his own validation because he's never got it from being played with from a kid, only for it to completely blow up in his face. Woody decided that Stinky Pete needs a little love, and I really love how he's finally going to get played with, but it's probably the worst owner he could ever have, thus ruining his value forever. But yeah, jokes aside, I do hope he got some love and would go on to be played with, like he originally wanted. But I'll talk more about Stinky Pete when we get to his video someday. Now, we get to the happy closure, where Jesse and Bullseye are a part of a family again. But I love the ending where Woody talks to Buzz, knowing that the good times won't last forever, but he still wants to be there to enjoy them in the first place. I love this movie so much. There is so much worth talking about. I've probably rewatched this movie more than any other in the series, and I feel that deserves it. But these are just my thoughts. What are yours? Do you feel that Toy Story 2 is still so good all these years later? Why? Why not? Share in the comments down below. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Hit like and subscribe if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, but please join us next week as we leave the toy box for Monstropolis as we talk about Monsters Inc.